So you're a filmmaker or a YouTuber, you know, whatever you do, video editing is part of your workflow, and you're torn between the MacBook Pro and the iPad Pro for that specific function. In this video, I'm going to be going over the basics of video editing with both of these devices and the applications available to them in order to help you decide which one is right for you. But before we continue, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like in this video, comment if you have any questions, suggestions, or opinions, as the algorithm likes that, and will help push my videos to more people. So without wasting any more time, let's jump into this video editing comparison. So first up, let's talk about the video editing applications available for both these devices. With iPad, you have iMovie and other, more amateur apps. iMovie actually doesn't work with iPadOS right now, but that's just a beta issue. I'm not even going to talk about those other apps because LumaFusion is the app you're going to want to get. It is the most comparable to the desktop apps like Final Cut and Premiere, and it's just a real joy to use, especially with Apple Pencil. It offers the same features you could find with Final Cut and Premiere. You get a timeline, esque thing. You can, move around different clips, add audio, adjust levels, add effects, add titles. We'll get to that in a little bit here, but yeah, this is pretty much the only app that I would recommend using as of right now if you want to do any level of professional video editing with this device. So in regard to the software available for your Mac, we have the Adobe suite with Adobe Premiere and After Effects. We also have DaVinci Resolve 16, and of course, how could we forget Final Cut Pro 10, which is the application I will be demoing today, and is the application I use to edit my YouTube videos. So the cons for iPad Pro in terms of software, the only one I can think of is the lack of variety. You don't have like another video editing app that you can really use that compares once again to Final Cut or Premiere. If there is one that I don't know about, please feel free to link that or talk about it in the comments section down below. But once again, as I said, as of right now, LumaFusion, although it's a little bit expensive and totally worth it, is the only app you really have to choose from right now. So are there any cons with the software available? Absolutely none that I can think of, because all the professional applications are built for either Windows or macOS at the moment. Next up, I want to talk about importing footage with these devices. So with the iPad Pro, all you need is a USB Type-C dongle for like an SD card or whatever media you use. You got to plug it in, then you go to the Files app, and then your device will show up in the Locations tab. So let's go into this folder real quick here. So I can see the footage that I took for my MacBook Pro content. Let's preview a clip here. This is shot in 4K. And as of right now, from my experience with the iPadOS beta, it is a little bit choppy. And I mean, like, if you really do heavily rely on previewing stuff, you're probably going to want to go with the Mac, but I doubt that this is a huge software issue. But it's not the biggest deal, because if you know what clips work, or generally what clips work, once you have them imported, you're not going to have any playback issues at all. So let's select the clips that I want to import here. So I'm going to select this one, this one, and this one. And I'm actually going to switch it up to this one. So I'm going to click move here with the pencil. I'm going to move it to my iPad, and I'm going to make a new folder called MacBook Pro footage, and I'm going to hit done. So then I'm going to copy those files over. So as you can see, they are being imported here. It is not as fast as it would take on like a MacBook or a Mac, but it's happening nonetheless, and it's a little bit glitchy too. Like, I had to click cancel and go out of the app and then go to this actual folder to see that these files were copying. So, there are some bugs that need to be, figured out, and UI elements that need to be changed. But yes, you can import the footage and it will go to a designated folder. As for importing footage on your Mac, it's the same deal like the iPad Pro. You need a USB Type-C dongle for your SD card or whatever media you have. You need to plug it into one of the 2 or one of the 4 ports on your MacBook Pro. And then all you gotta do is go into Finder and then find that. It'll pop up. So see the untitled media popped up. So you can click on this little icon to get to it, or you can go to the Locations tab in Finder to get to that. So we're gonna go into the DCIM folder, the 140 Pana folder, where the footage that I want is available. So you can actually select, you can preview by pressing the space bar. So I want this piece of footage right here. I'm gonna mark that with a color. I also want this clip too, so I'm gonna mark that. And then, say you mark them, and once you want to import them, you can actually make a new folder wherever you want in Finder or on any disk or whatever. I'm going to make it on my desktop just for convenience, and I'm going to call it footage, or I'm going to call it MacBook Pro footage, just like I did with my iPad Pro here. And I'm going to drag these 2 clips over, and it's as simple as that. Drag and drop, and it'll take just a few seconds here. And here we have all of our footage transferred. It actually was similar in speed to the iPad Pro. I think it's this dongle or this adapter that might be bottlenecking the speed, but I think if you buy a higher quality one, you can actually import footage a little bit quicker. So are there any cons to importing footage with an iPad Pro? As of right now, with the iPadOS beta, it's a little bit weird, but for the most part, it works just like it would on a Mac. You have easy access to your external storage. It's easy enough to create a new folder and copy it to your actual device. So I didn't really run into too much trouble here. Although I do prefer the import method and just experience with Mac right now, this is not a bad experience whatsoever. And if you are solely reliant on this device, I don't think you should have a problem, especially once again with the full version or the non-beta version of iPadOS coming this fall. So are there any cons to importing footage with the MacBook Pro? Just like with software, there are zero I can think of, because Finder is just incredible. It is my favorite file managing system out there on the market. It's very easy to locate your external storage and to drag and drop media from it into a folder of your choice. Next up, I want to talk about timeline interaction with both these devices with their different pieces of software as well. So with my iPad Pro here, I imported my footage. I actually had to save it to my videos because for some reason you can't connect to the Files app. Not yet with LumaFusion, but I'll drag a clip in here. So I'll drag this down like so with the pencil. And here we go. I can scrub through it just like I would with something like Premiere or Final Cut. I can actually crop it a little bit here so I can find the part that I want. If I need to make it a direct cut, I can click the cut button and it will do that. I can make this clip go above this clip. I can delete it by dragging it off. And as you can see here, I'm having no trouble doing any of this. It's a very easy experience. You can, play through here as well. It goes to show that LumaFusion is really an excellent program here. And playback too is really, really smooth. This is a full 4K clip, no compression whatsoever. This is the raw file right off my camera, unedited. So I'm going to drag and drop the media that I copied over to my little media tab or area in Final Cut. So in terms of interacting with the timeline with Final Cut Pro 10, it's very easy. It's similar to LumaFusion, just so I can drag and drop a clip like so. So drag and drop here. I can zoom in. I can actually take the audio and bring it down to negative decibels, or I can go into the info tab and then bring it all the way down to negative decibels, which is what I usually do with my B-roll. I can drag another clip here. And yeah, interacting is very, very nice. A very smooth experience. The trackpad is actually a really nice fine point way to go about, cropping footage and whatever. And playback is pretty smooth as well. I have it set to better quality, and as you can see here, we can play back a full 4K clip at full quality. Although we haven't added any effects yet, it plays very, very smoothly. So here we go here. Just a tiny bit of stutter once in a while, but you can definitely play back 4K clips here. So are there any cons with, interacting with clips on, like, say, a timeline or just with the UI in general with the video editing app on iPad Pro? And with LumaFusion, my answer is absolutely none that I can think of. It's super smooth, and that once again is thanks to the 4GB of RAM and the A12X, which is a real monster of a processor. Also, once again, LumaFusion is just an excellent application. So are there any cons with interacting with the timeline in an application like Final Cut Pro or Premiere on the MacBook Pro? Just like with everything that I've mentioned beforehand, there are really none I can think of. I mean, it's a very smooth experience. This is a professional app, and using the trackpad as well as the keyboard with the keyboard shortcuts is a really great experience. And I can definitely say that because this is the software that I use every single day to create my YouTube videos. Next up, I want to talk about clip adjustment, whether you're talking about exposure, volume, color grading, cropping, etc. With LumaFusion here, all you have to do is double tap a clip that's on your timeline. It'll bring you to a window here. You can mess with the audio levels, so we can bring it all the way down, which I usually do for B-roll. You can also go in and adjust the cropping, so I can, bring it to, like, let's say 130 or 129% here. I can adjust this really easy. Once again, with the pencil, we can adjust the X position and the Y position just like you could in an application like Premiere. It's a very smooth experience. You can also add effects like zoom in just like you could with, Final Cut and Ken Burns. So we'll add the zoom in effect and see how that looks on the timeline. So as you can see here, we get an artificial zooming effect, which is really awesome because this is one of the few applications I've seen which allows you to do that with an iPad. You can also adjust the speed here, so I can bring it down to 0.8x, which will bring it to a 24 FPS look, so it says 25.29. So as you can see here, it offers a little bit more of a cinematic frame rate here, which I often use in my videos when I'm editing with Final Cut. You can reverse, maintain audio pitch, etc. You can also change the look of your footage. So you have original, anti-green, cool. So these are like the filters that you can apply by default, but you can also really get into the nitty-gritty here, you know, change brightness, you can adjust contrast, you can go into the levels actually, I believe. So here are the levels right here, so you can adjust the highlights and the shadows. And although I'm doing a really poor job of doing that right now, you can see the level of, you know, manipulation you have with these tools. I think you can reset it to maybe, so you can trash it, tap the preset to begin, so original. So you can actually edit the filters too. So yeah, just like you can in Final Cut with the info tab, you definitely can manipulate footage to your liking, color it the way you want, etc. So in regard to adjusting footage with Final Cut Pro, we can go to the info tab and we can adjust stuff like, you know, the transform, scale, you know, X and Y, position. So we can bring this to like, you know, maybe like 110. And then you can adjust crop. So if you want to crop in or do Ken burns, so we can crop in here with the crop tool, or we can do Ken burns where it will start out and like slowly zoom in over the course of the clip's lifespan. So as you can see here, as we drag through, there we go, that's how it's done. We can also adjust the color, so I always like to bring out my vector scope, which you might be able to bring out in LumaFusion. I haven't figured that out yet, but with Final Cut, it is a very streamlined feature, so you can just kind of make sure your levels are correct. You can adjust the mids and the highlights and the shadows. You can also adjust the color. This is kind of how I usually do it. I kind of bring out the oranges, teal and orange type thing, bring out the teal in the shadows, maybe make my midtones a little bluer. You can see the before and the after here. And I also want to backtrack for just a second here. I forgot to mention there is an effects tab with Final Cut, which allow you to add kind of like filters to your footage just like you could in LumaFusion, but these are a little bit more advanced. You have like 50s TV, you have like Alien Lab artifacts, so it's kind of like preset like color grading and some effects. Like Bad TV is a really good effect. I've used it countless times, and all you got to do is just drag and drop it onto your footage and then adjust how much you want it to, you know, appear, or how much intensity you want with it. So that's another way you can, you know, adjust footage I forgot to mention. So are there any cons to using an app like LumaFusion to adjust footage using an iPad Pro? My answer to that is not too many, although I think that it's not as professional of an experience as what you would get with Final Cut and Premiere. It's damn well on its way and offers infinitely more control over your footage in comparison to an app like iMovie. So I'm very impressed that you can even scale and adjust the levels like you can with this app. It's very impressive. So any cons to doing this kind of work with Final Cut Pro or Premiere or whatever you use? Like I've kept saying, no, there really is none, because as we know here, video editing has been well established on laptop devices and desktops, and on, you know, desktop, laptop operating systems like Windows and macOS. It's a very professional and streamlined experience, especially once you get the hang of it and learn these programs. You can really make some fine professional adjustments to your clips, whether it's scale or the, you know, exposure or saturation or any other effects like that. So next up, I want to talk about adding titles and transitions with both of these devices and their respective pieces of software. So with LumaFusion here, we can press the plus button to add a main title, then we can drag it over a respective clip. Oops, let's try that again. And there we are, just like you would with any other app. Then you can double tap it to change the text, so we can call it, I don't know, title. Super creative, I know. You have different fonts you can choose from, different outlines. You can change the size, the opacity, everything, just like you could with Final Cut or Premiere. And yeah, it's a pretty simple process, no complaints here. You can also add transitions, so I'll click the plus button again. Let's add a transition. So this is the simple cross dissolve, and it'll bring us into another clip. So that was easy as well. Not too much thought into that. Let's talk titles and transitions with the MacBook here with Final Cut. You can go to the titles tab and pick from a number of different animated and snazzy titles. Some of them are professional, some of them are just cheesy. I usually just press Control and T to create a new title, which I then animate, which I then make a little more interesting with transitions like crossfade and whatever. But you can, you know, adjust what the title says and clicking this little line and showing the text inspector here, so we can just call it, you know, this is a title. You can also, you know, move it around with the mouse. You can change the size. You can pretty much add any font that you want that you can download off the web. You can add outline, which I usually do. So, and then adding transitions, you can go to the transitions tab here and add cross dissolve and a bunch of other ones. Bloom, checker, chevron. I mostly use the cross dissolve because it's the most simple and professional in my opinion. You don't need crazy transitions to do that. So here we go, we have this transition created. We can make it slower, longer, whatever, just like you can in LumaFusion. You can also do a Command T to create a transition here. So that's usually what I do when I'm doing basic transitions with titles and whatever. So you can see I can do that with this one as well. So are there any cons to adding transitions and titles with this app? The only two I can really think of right now is the fact that I don't really know how many fonts you can get onto here. If you can download them, that might be a new feature coming, another update, but as far as I'm concerned, you're stuck with the fonts that you have on the iPad Pro or with this app, and that's about it. In terms of transitions, I am pretty sure that there's more than just a cross dissolve, but that's all I've been able to, find as of right now. Maybe you can buy additional transitions from some kind of, in-app purchase, but as of right now, all I can toggle is cross dissolve. But if you are a seasoned LumaFusion editor yourself, leave me a comment if there are more. I just, for the life of me, cannot find them. And before I ask the rhetorical question again, no, there are no cons with adding transitions and titles with Final Cut Pro or Premiere for that matter on the MacBook Pro. As I said before, these apps have been built for these desktop operating systems, and it is iPad or the iPad apps that are trying to emulate and catch up to what is available here. Next up, I want to talk about adding audio to projects with both these devices. So with iPad Pro, I believe you can download audio files, whether you're using a video as an audio file or you're actually downloading an MP3 or an M4V or whatever you do. You can download it to your downloads folder with the Files app, and then LumaFusion will allow you to access that folder and drag in a clip like that. So I downloaded my typical music that I use in my YouTube videos, and it's as simple as drag and drop. Of course, you can, edit the audio as well, so we can click the audio button and bring the levels up or down, add some basic effects here, delay, distortion, whatever. It's pretty easy, simply drag and drop from that downloads folder. When it comes to adding audio with your Mac, you can just go to your downloads or whatever folder you have your audio file in and just drag it into Final Cut like so, and boom, it's already there. You can go to the audio tab, once again, adjust the volume, you can change the position, you can add like a fade in really easily, and yeah, it's a very simple, straightforward process. Nothing much to it other than dragging and dropping, really. All you gotta do is either drag it in from here or from your desktop or whatever folder you have, and bam, then you can go to town, clip it, lower the volume, add different effects and settings with it. So are there any cons to adding audio to a LumaFusion project with your iPad? It's a little bit more difficult, I will say, than using something like Final Cut or a Premiere, but it's definitely possible and not super annoying either. So long as you download it to your downloads folder, it'll be right there for you to just drag and drop and adjust in your project. And for the last time here, I'll say no, there are no cons to adding audio to a project on your MacBook, whether you're using Final Cut, Premiere, or DaVinci Resolve, because these applications are professional, they're very well established, and these, desktop, laptop operating systems like, macOS in this case, allow you to drag and drop files into these programs really, really easily. And last up, let's talk about export time. So I have the same exact project with similar retouching, retiming, and color grading with both my iPad Pro with LumaFusion and my MacBook Pro with Final Cut. So with my iPad here, I'm going to export this clip at the finest quality, I guess. So I'm going to take out my stopwatch here. So exporting at the standard 50 megabit per second quality at H.264 and 4K, starting in 3, 2, 1. So that's funny, exporting a minute clip with LumaFusion at H.264 at 4K at the standard, megabit per second. It took about a minute, so that's very, very convenient. So we'll compare that to the MacBook Pro's export times. All right, so let's test export times here with the MacBook Pro. We're going to export it at H.264, so let's change the codec to that. It's going to be in full 4K, and yeah, let's do it. So next, and we're going to save it to the desktop. All right, so 3, 2, 1, start. All right, so with a pretty much identical 4K clip that's a minute long, the export time was 43 seconds at H.264 in 4K, so that's very impressive. And that makes sense because this application, Final Cut Pro, really does take advantage of the MacBook's hardware here. I mean, LumaFusion has done a great job with optimization and adding features, but I mean, Final Cut, once again, is very well established and is just so well optimized for the MacBook Pro here. So maybe, and this is just my educated guess, you're going to get faster export times with Final Cut with pretty much any MacBook Pro you get in comparison to iPad Pro with LumaFusion as of right now. And actually, I just realized this for the final time asking this stupid rhetorical question. Are there any cons with exporting? Not with Final Cut. That's all I can say. I don't know about Premiere. I don't know about DaVinci. They might be a little bit longer. They might take a little bit longer than that of LumaFusion. But I mean, this application, Final Cut Pro with Mac, it's just so well optimized, and export times are really, really excellent. So what is my takeaway after editing with both of these devices? Well, I'm going to tell you, I prefer to use a Mac with Final Cut Pro now, or any laptop or desktop for that matter, with a professional application. While iPad Pro has come a long way with iPadOS and LumaFusion, it still isn't quite up to par, in my opinion, with laptops and desktops running, Final Cut, Premiere, or DaVinci Resolve. I would say iPad Pro is about 80 to 85% there for me when it comes to professional video editing. And as of right now, there are some features with Final Cut and other applications that I just cannot live without, like auto-syncing audio. I do not believe you can do that with LumaFusion, but I do it all the time because I record my video and my audio separately, so it would be a huge pain to sync them up in post manually. And as we saw with the export times, they were quicker with the MacBook Pro in comparison to LumaFusion with the iPad Pro, but I said that's due to optimization. But overall, I'm quite impressed with both these devices. If I was forced to video edit with this device, I could make it work, and I can make it work and be happy, honestly. If you are somebody who wants to use an iPad, wants to use the Apple Pencil, and thinks that this format or form factor will work for you in your workflow, then by all means, buy one, save some money, you're gonna have a great time, and you can push out some really great videos. And I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you use to get the final product, you just gotta know how to edit, and you can definitely take advantage of LumaFusion here. But if you're somebody who's a real die-hard video producer, you wanna do a lot of cinematography, you wanna sync a bunch of audio and video, deal with large files, whatever, I just say stick with a Mac, or stick with a computer, for that matter, for the time being. So that about wraps things up here with this video editing comparison. I hope this video helped you out and that you were able to decide which device is right for you. I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like in this video, comment if you have any questions, suggestions, or opinions, and subscribe for more content like this. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.